Alright, this time the quick speed shop. You won't need one of these if you got one of these. I'm a professional, don't try this at home. Okay, so I've been driving the Model A Hot Rod Shop Truck now. I've put, I think, like about 800 miles on it ish since I've been driving it. And an embarrassing thing that happened, I was coming back, I did a whole bunch of driving, and I've got some gauges in here from the 60s, or Stewart Warners, and the fuel gauge used to work great when I had the original gas tank I had in this from the original build, but then when I put the Mustang gas tank in it, the sending unit, I think, is a different ohm range, and the gauge didn't read right, and I ended up running out of gas like 5 miles from a gas station. Luckily, my friends were nearby and able to come bail me out, but I don't want that to happen again, so I've got a new Stewart Warner fuel gauge, and we're going to work on fixing the truck, hopefully get her straightened out so I won't run out of gas again. Alright, you see my gauges here. They're 1960s Stewart Warner gauges. These are the real deal. They got the 160 mile an hour speedometer down here, fuel pressure gauge, which isn't hooked up, water temperature, then the original fuel gauge here. And if I turn the battery on, turn the ignition on, you'll see it went to just about 3/4, but I can tell you that the tank is at least halfway empty. It's kind of tight in here, but what I need to do is there's two types of Stewart Warner fuel gauges, and the way a fuel gauge looks, it's a variable resistor, and it looks at ohms of resistance. And I've got a 65 to 66 Mustang gas tank in here, and I know the resistance of the fuel gauge is 10 to 70 ohms for the Mustang tank, and the Stewart Warner gauges can come in 10 to 70, or they come in like I think like 100 and something to like 255 or something like that. So I think this is the higher one because it used to read good with the original fuel sending unit I had, but now it reads way off. So I went to Summit Racing and I ordered a Stewart Warner gauge, the same style. It's not quite accurate to the original 60s gauges, but it's as close as I could find. And this is a 12 volt gauge, and it is a 10 to 70 ohm resistance. So if I put this gauge in place of this one, it should make the fuel gauge read correct. All I got to do to put it in is pop out this original dash panel, and then it's just electrical connection. Pull this one out, hook this one up, and then we should see the gauge read more accurately. And hopefully I won't run out of gas anymore, because that'd be a bummer. Now if you notice here, this is the original fuel gauge when the gas tank was in the the tank here. This is like a 10 or 11 gallon tank that was in the cowl, and you would fill it from the neck on the outside. Well, this is the original fuel gauge, and it just had a float that bounced around, but I've cut the bottom of this tank all out of here, so I've just got it locked like at 3/8 of a tank just so you can see the numbers on there. But this has got a glass gauge, and it went right into the fuel tank, and this is a soldered on piece. But that's not functional anymore, and the tank's not functional. So I've got my piece loose. I got a stock 2829 speedometer here, just for looks, a stock key just for looks. And this is where the amp gauge would have gone on the original Model A dash. Yeah. So pretty much just got to get back here and take the wires off. Right, so on the back of the cluster here, got the gauge. I've got these red wires in my gauge, positive 12 volts to the gauge. I'm trying to do this so you can see it and hold on to it at the same time. Get off there. I just need to undo the bar that holds the gauge onto here. Then the gauge will come right out like that. Bam! Now the new gauge is a little bit different on the back here. you can see it's got the studs for the bars, and it's also got 3 ports here. What are they? Got a ground, got the sending unit, and then you got the ignition wire here. Now there's also a port for a gauge light, but I have in the dash, I have some lighted lights that flood water flow down over the dash of light, because none of these original gauges are backlit. So I'm not going to put the light in this one. I'm just going to hook it up manually like it was. So I'll just go and I'll put it back in my hole, where it's 1 2 1/8, so it fits right back up in there. Bam. I'll get it straightened out, and I'll bolt it back down with a new bar. Alright, I got it mounted with a new bar back to the back of the gauge pad here, and it is ready to go on the front, just like that. Now I'm just going to hook the 2 wires up. The nuts for the gauge bar are 3/8, but the nuts for the wires are smaller, so I got to get a different size socket. Now it should make ground through the panel, because the original gauge made ground through there, so I'm not going to hook up the ground stud. I'm just going to use the ground of this existing screws. And let's see here. Uh-oh. Oh, I got to redo it because I came out of the top of the wires and they're too short. The reach, and it's hotter than blazes in here. I'll switch the wires around real fast. Hold on. Okay, move the wires to the bottom, so now I should be able to reinstall this. Oh, what's going on here? Oh no. Oh. Alright, I'm having a collision here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's 2 holes I just hole sawed into the original gas tank to clear the back of the gauge, because the bracket would sit in there like that, actually like that. Well, this bracket is a little bit, this one's centered up on the original gauge, and this one is off center just a little bit. So now it's hitting the dash. So I got to get in here and I got to clearance this just a little bit. So this will hit, or won't hit. Okay, we got the gauge installed. Let's go ahead and hit the key. Now it should swing up to probably half a tank or so, because that's about what I got in the truck right now. Let's see. Oh, it's doing something. That's not good. It should read half a tank. What is going on here? Well, we got possibly 2 things wrong here. Maybe I'm not getting a good ground between the gauge and the pod here, so I'm going to go ahead and make up a ground screw that can ground the gauge right to the tank separately. But we're also going to pull this out. We're going to use a voltmeter and switch it to ohms and see what the resistance is on the fuel gauge. And 10 should be, I think, empty, and 70 is full, or vice versa, one of the 2. So I want to see what the ohms are. Right now it's showing E, so it's going to be at one or the other extremes, supposedly. But I know the truck's not out of gas, so I want to meter the wire and see the resistance on the wire. Okay, so first thing I did is I installed a ground lead to the ground terminal. Let's just go ahead and check that and make sure that wasn't our problem. Turn the battery back on, turn the ignition on. Alright, it's just going to 0 there, so I want to check with the voltmeter. We're going to go to ohms. I'm going to 0 to 200. I don't know if I can put this so you can see it. Maybe there. I should be able to measure between the ground and the sender wire to get my ohms ohm difference. And I don't know if you can see the screen, but when I put these together, it goes to 0 pretty much. That shows that you got, you know, continuity. So I should be able to measure the resistance between the sender wire and ground. Should give the ohm reading of the sending unit. It appears to be 863 ohms, which is way, way, way too high. That means a lot of resistance. I wonder if I got a wiring problem. I'm going to go under the truck, and I'm not sure if you can see it, but I'm going to go under there in the other end of this fuel gauge. I'm going to go from there to ground and see what the ohm range is on the gas tank, see if we got a wiring problem between the tank and here. So just hang tight a second. Alright, the tank checks out good. I got about 25 ohms on the sending unit. So that tells me that which I think is about right for the amount of gas that's in the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the wire, the sending wire, from the gauge so we can get an accurate resistance reading on the wire itself. And if I got a lot of resistance coming up here, there's something wrong with the wiring, or the wire is damaged or has a loose connection and has a lot of resistance on it. That's not making the gauge read right. So now go from, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but go from ground I'm showing 53 ohms up here now. It's a lot better than it was. I played around with the wire on the end of the sending unit. I wonder if the connection is loose or dirty on the connector back there, because I played around and now I've got 53 ohms here. So if I hook this wire back up to the gauge and turn it on, it should read differently now, because of that 53 ohms. But because I measured at the tank, it's only reading 20, 21 or 2 at the tank. That still means something's wrong, but I messed around with the wire when I was down there and it felt a little goofy, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. Let's go ahead and turn the battery back on. Turn the ignition on and see what the gauge reads now. That still reads about the same, reading empty. For grins and giggles, I'll do it again here. Oh, what's going on here? Now I've got the correct 25 ohms. What in the world is going on here? That's reading the same ohms as the tank is now. What on earth is going on here? Okay, so I bolted the dash back in because now I'm getting the same ohms at the back of the gauge as I am on the tank. And when I turn the ignition on, I mean, it does pull up off of E and it goes just a little bit past E here. so it's coming up off the pin quite a ways. You can see that move like that. You know, that goes down off there and then it pulls up in here. Like so. So what I think I'm going to do is I put a measuring stick in the tank, and I've only got maybe a quarter tank of gas. So it's not reading off that far. I mean, I don't know if this little line is supposed to be a quarter or just a random line, because that's more close to half. I'm not sure what the sweep is on this. But I guess I'm going to take it to the gas station when I get gas, fill the tank all the way up, see where this registers when the tank is full, and see the ohms of the resistance on the sending unit when the tank is full, which must be 70, I would guess, and then see how that corresponds to the gauge. And if I have the same ohms, maybe the sending unit is off in the tank. Definitely the original gauge wasn't the correct ohmage, because it was all the way up almost on full, and it would go to full, then it would only come down a little bit. So and the gauge worked when I had the previous tank. So I definitely think the gauge is the wrong ohm reading for the new sending unit, and this is the gauge that's supposed to be correct. So if it's reading 25 right now, I guess full would be 70. So I'll fill the tank up and then see where it reads and play around with it. Maybe check the connection on the back on the ring terminal, make sure that is crimped on good with no resistance, because I was reading it right there, and play around with it. So I guess not a lot of resolution right now, but at least the gauge is down here close to reading, and I'll put gas in it and I'll try to figure out what's going on. So I guess right now more questions than answers. I mean, I've got the correct gauge that should go with that correct sending unit ohm rating. Like I said, 10 to 70. It's reading like 22 to 25 ohms right now, which is probably about a quarter of a tank. The gauge is reading less than a quarter of a tank, but I measured put a dipstick in it, and it looks to be about a quarter of a tank. So, like I said, I'll take it to the gas station. I'll fill it up, see where it's reading from there, and then ring the wire out again. Maybe see what the resistance is when the tank is full. Maybe the sending unit is not functioning. Maybe the arm needs to be bent on the sending unit in the tank. You know, maybe it's down on E with a quarter of a tank to go. That's possible. So I'm not going to be able to tell until I fill it all the way back up. But I just wanted to show you the little. Once you start driving these things, you got these little like tribulations you got to go through, and squeaks and squawks and ticks and rattles and gauges that don't work correctly and running out of gas. You know, things to figure out. I mean, I was used to driving this thing back in the original build, and I knew the gauge worked awesome. So for now, I guess that's where we're going to leave it. I'll tinker around with it and I'll report back to you. But I love driving the Model A Hot Rod Shop Truck. The thing's loud, fast. It's working flawlessly. It's running good. It's stopping good. It's driving. It's not doing anything horrendous. It goes slow, goes fast. It stops and steers. And I'm having a real fun time driving it. So that's it for now. I'll keep tinkering. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I'm putting out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Hit that bell for alerts. Tell your friends. And we'll see you right back here at the Quick Speed Shop, having fun with the Model A Hot Rod Shop Truck.